Jane, earlier on in the interview, you said something that really made me stop and think, and it was get what we want, create what we don't have. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, and look for what we need, and identify what we need. What kind of needs do we have, and create the pieces that we don't have. One of the things I didn't have when I started, because they didn't exist, were computers. When computers came out, I ended up getting one that did not, this was back in the days of old DOS and, the big 5.5 inch floppies and stuff. And I would write an article for a magazine and hit save, and it was like file deleted. And it's just like banging my head against the monitor. And I finally, when I got my first Mac, that was sort of where things started shifting, because that was a system that just worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody. It worked for me. Mm-hmm. And it was reliable, and, we have built from there. But then it was like, okay, I need to have a database so that I could invoice people when they order books. So I had to learn database construction. I needed to learn inventory management. I needed to learn things like desktop publishing, so that I wouldn't have to keep paying typesetters what was a fortune to have pieces that now I could do on a computer. This is amazing. Writing books, I had to learn word processing. That part wasn't all that hard. Now I'm learning that, and then mid-90s, late 90s, things come up and say, well, do you have a website? No. Took classes, learned how to write code, learned how to use Dreamweaver or Go Live before that, learned how to do it. It's like, teach me how to make one page and I'll just do a save as, 800 times, so I have 800 pages on my site. So I've had to learn an awful lot of stuff. So to create what I wanted, I had to get a lot of pieces that I didn't have. And one of the things I did when I was starting my business, so this is way, way back at the beginning, I took a workshop from a colleague of mine, a friend who's in budget and finance. Her name's Judy Lawrence. And she's been, a friend for the past 32 years, and is actually a co-author on another book we did together. But at the time, she was doing a workshop on budgeting and finances for teachers. And she had a book, and she sold well over 500,000 copies of this book by now. At the time the book was selling for $5, I barely had enough change to buy one of the books from her. And I sat in there and I listened to what she was saying about budgeting and managing money, because, as a teacher, I never learned any of that stuff. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And afterwards, I went up to her and I said, okay, Judy, listen, I just wrote a book. I'm starting a business. You're a business person. I mean, and she was an educator also as a counselor, but she sort of moved into this field. And I had a yellow tablet with me, and she said, do you have a separate bank account for your business? No, wrote that down. You need a business name. Do you have a business license? She gave me all these little nuts and bolts and pieces that I didn't have, because and I just happened to ask the right person. And I walked out of there with an entire, yellow tablet filled with to-do things. Now, it wasn't like I was sitting around bored because I didn't have anything to do. This was on top of what I was doing. And I was still working at the university. And I went out grumbling, and I was like, okay. And it's just like, okay, I can't look at this whole list. So it's like, fold the list over. I can pick one item on the list, Mm-hmm. Oh, get a bank account for your business. I can do that. Check that off. Go to another item. Check that off. I think sometimes these obstacles, as you call them, or challenges, are so big that it just stops us in our tracks. And I'll give you another example.
Yeah.
My first book, The Beginning Teacher's Resource Handbook, was picked up by David S. Lake Publishing, which became Fearon, which became, I don't even know anymore. I've really lost track of this publisher shuffle. But they came to me at in like 85 or so, and said, or 86, and said, we want to publish your book. And ended up giving me a decent deal with it. And so they took the book with them as it was written. When I got it back, it had been like Xerox, so I had a stack. I'm not exaggerating. It was 400 pages, like this, just this huge stack. And it was so huge because each page had anywhere from 1 to 10 little sticky notes. This is back before we had, the features that we have in our word processing programs.
Yeah.
We were still doing everything on paper and doing it on typewriters. And, I got this box filled with paper, filled with sticky notes. And none of these sticky notes were saying, gosh, you're a good writer. Every single sticky note was something I had to change or revise or clarify. And I looked at this and I couldn't breathe. And there was a letter from the editor on top, my editor, that I still have the letter. And it had 2 words. It said, don't faint.
Oh, he actually put those words on top?
Yeah. She said, don't faint. And signed it and said, we'll do this. We'll get through it, basically. I closed the box, I put it under my desk, and I used it as a footrest for the next 2 months because it took me 2 months to get the courage to pull 1 page out of this box and just work on the yellow sticky notes that were on that 1 page. I couldn't do the whole book, but I could do a page. 2 months, that's how I'm telling you.
Led you to a different page.
Yeah. But it was a footrest. It was a brick under my desk for 2 months. I couldn't even look at it until I broke it down into something that I could manage. I could do a page. I couldn't do the book. I could do a page. I could do a sticky note.